Youths gathered in groups. There was palpable tension here. Security personnel are on ground to ward off any breach of peace as gunshots are fired intermittently. The protesters want the return of subsidy on petrol, among other demands.
We want the government to make fuel back to 100 naira per litre. Let them restore the so-called subsidy they remove. It's the subsidy that causes all this hardship.
If you kill me now, you kill Nigeria. You can see my flag. So I'm fighting for my right.
We want to let government know that yes, our suffering is too much. So they have to reduce the price of things for us.
In a twinkle of an eye, the protesters gather in their large number and headed to the city center. But security personnel rose to the occasion. They stopped the protesters with canisters of tear gas. Commuters and private car owners are temporarily stranded as roads are closed to vehicular movements. This is the popular Wuse market. On a good day, this market is usually a beehive of activity where buyers and sellers carry out their daily business transactions. But on the first day of the nationwide protest, this market, like many others in the nation's capital, is deserted. Inside the market, most of the shops are under lock and key.
I work in the market, I have shop open, but some are afraid and do not open.
At the city center, the roads are devoid of the regular vehicular movements as workers stay indoors. This is the Federal Secretariat and the workers are nowhere in sight. The organizers declared a 10-day protest to drive home their demands for good governance, reduction in the prices of fuel and electricity, as well as better living conditions. Jokeyatsa, TVC News, Abuja.
What are we saying?
Chaotic scenes in the heart of the federal capital city. Shots rang out on the streets as police fired tear gas to disperse protesters.
Only this one can free on the Nigeria. We are not going back, we are in the here.
The Eagle Square in Abuja appeared to be the most preferred location for these protesters, despite a court order restricting them to the MKO Abiola National Stadium. They marched from the National Stadium through the long stretch of the Constitution Avenue in Abuja to the Eagle Square in the heart of the federal capital, an outright disobedience to a subsisting court order. The surge of the angry protesters was met with the resolve of anti-riot security operatives out to maintain law and order. Appeals from the Minister of State for Youth and the FCT Commissioner of Police could not prevail on the demonstrators to return to the stadium.
I don't carry gun. I only carry this placard. Even if peaceful protest, they only throw tear gas anyhow.
The shots of tear gas could not fully break the ranks of these protesters, but the consistency and persistence of the police saved the day and prevented an already bad situation from becoming worse.
We are demanding for justice. Youth are suffering. There is no job in the country.
The federal government insists these protests are not necessary, as it has put in place measures to cushion the hardship caused by necessary economic reforms. But protesting citizens are still on the streets and online, chanting slogans calling for an end to bad governance. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
The MKO Abiola Stadium was heavily guarded by armed security personnel who were held to maintain order and enforce the court's restrictions. This is in compliance with a court order restricting them to the facility. Protesters gathered as early as 8 a.m. singing solidarity songs. Activists and groups have declared the protest in response to the economic hardship.
Our country needs changing. If you want to know whether we get money or we no get money, empower police. Give them what they give senator.
give road safety, wetin they give senators. Now they pay senator, wetin they pay police. Nigeria will be okay in 1 year. No, I will be no problem. They can work better. That is it. When they so die, even take your I am not ending Nigeria. I am begging. Government, look at our side. Please change style.
They insisted that government must grant their demands.
It's 60 years overdue. It's 60 years of a cruel, greedy, brutal political elite that has subjugated the Nigerian people, and of course massive suffering, blood, tears and sorrow, like the great Abameda sang about. So that's why we're here. It's 60 years of sorrow for the Nigerian people, and we're saying enough is enough.
The protesters marched from National Stadium to Eagle Square to continue their protest. Ademola Lawrence, TVC News, Abuja.
Members of the civil society group, youths and residents of Ikeja gathered at Under Bridge, Ikeja at 7 a.m. intending to start a procession. After about an hour of resistance, police officers and members of civil society groups commenced protest work. The procession, which started from Ikeja, ended at Ojota, Lagos, under the supervision of police officers.
Too much of hike in price can no longer be acceptable by the masses. We are tired, we are hungry, we no longer can afford the daily amenities by regular Nigerian citizens.
Things are getting worse every day. What you buy today, if you go to market tomorrow, it will increase. Then what are we now talking about?
In Ojota, protesters not happy with the current situation of the country are calling for an end to impunity. They are also demanding that the government be accountable to the people.
The bad governance of Nigeria, all the cripple of the democracy have been, all the institutions of the have been crippled. We are calling on the Nigerians. We are calling the father of the nations. We are calling all the fathers of our state to please arise to this task.
Buhari regime, they brought in the money policy, the new note policy. Did you know the hardship on the land then? We Nigerians, we easily forget things. The problem we face during that monetary policy is far bigger than this, but nobody is praying for the downfall of the country. Sure, you understand? But you know, politicians, they always want to use any form of gathering like this to manipulate people's mindset into changing their narrative from being a peaceful protesters to vandalizing of property. That is why we don't want such to repeat itself.
Oshodi area in Lagos was peaceful as residents went about their daily activities without any form of violence. Musliu Akinsoya encouraged youths in Oshodi to remain peaceful and express satisfaction as residents shunned any form of protest.
So we've been going around to check everywhere that nobody disrupts the free flow of traffic, the passengers and other places. We've gone around and there's nothing like protest within this axis.
At the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, passengers had no complaints as flights were not affected. It is his responsibility how this protest turns out, so the need for this patrol. He met with some of the protesters. Aerial surveillance wasn't left out. Most times, the aircraft had to go very low for better view. He gave an overall evaluation of the protest.
Made our deployments as early as 3 a.m. and our men were well positioned, took charge of strategic location and vulnerable points. And by the time the protesters came out, they saw our men everywhere. And we have been engaging them. They have been very peaceful, and our men have been very fantastic. So far, the protest has been devoid of any form of violence.
The protesters made their demands known in a peaceful manner. Ivy Kano, TVC News, Lagos.
Our reporters there for you. Now let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to discuss the state of the nation as hashtag hardship protest begins nationwide. Dr. Sule Yaosile, Kano-based journalist and academic, as well as Oyekachi Adekoya, a security and defense consultant, who's also the CEO, Aquila Intelligence, are my guest tonight. Stay with us, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Let's get right into the conversation for tonight. It is day one, and 14 states in total witnessed protests in the country. Sadly, a bus carrying about 11 journalists from different media houses, both print and broadcast, covering the hardship protest, was attacked by the rampaging hoodlums in Kano State. The attackers, who were carrying sticks and machetes along Sokoto Road, were said to have smashed the glasses of the vehicle, and those inside were showered with glass particles, including our correspondent Ibrahim Issa, who sustained some injury. The police in Kano State said a section of the Digital Industrial Park of the Nigerian Communication Commission, NCC, in Kano State was attacked by protesters on Thursday. The Commissioner of Police, Salma Dogo, confirmed that the generator house was set ablaze and the office was vandalized. In the face of the unrest arising from the #EndBad governance protest in Kano State, Governor Abba Yusuf has declared a 24-hour curfew in the state with immediate effect. I mean, it is worrisome that if day one happened this way, what happens on day two? What happens on day three and the remaining days? And do you think, I mean, many are wondering if this protest will last that long. Meanwhile, in all of these, security agencies say they are on top of their game and will continue to approach protesters professionally. So tonight, let's speak with Dr. Sule Yao Sule. He's a Kano-based journalist and also an academic. He joins me via Zoom. And also, Yekachi Adekoya is a security and defense consultant. Is the CEO, Aquila Intelligence. Good evening to you, Mr. Adekoya. Let me start this conversation with you while we wait for Dr. Sule Yao Sule. Good evening to you. So it's day one of #nationwide protest. What's your impression about this first day? Did it go as you envisaged?
Thank you, and good evening to the viewers. Unfortunately, some lives have been lost today. So first, my heart goes out to the family of the police officer killed, and those who lost life also in Borno this very day. In terms of our analysis and assessments and anticipation of what the day would have looked like, I think somewhat we were not disappointed. Some had anticipated that the protests would be widespread, uncontrolled, would break out into many pockets of riots and looting. But what we saw, interestingly, is an inverting of what occurred during the NSAS protest. It's still early days, I would say also, in that you had more devastation and destruction in the south as opposed in the north. Perhaps the political leaders in the north may have taken preparations for granted, is what this will be suggesting. Because in Lagos, for example, and most part of the southwest and the south-south, largely the incidence of protest has gone on without any unfortunate fracas with law enforcement. Sadly, the issues of IED, which seem now to be gaining more footing since the publication by Boko Haram last year, August, that they'll begin to deploy more IEDs, perhaps has mixed up with the planned protest incident, maybe giving these would-be attackers the opportunity to have a go at the mass gathering of people, which led to loss of life also in Borno State. So there are a number of issues that are happening. The South-South has not been so eventful. The Southeast has been largely uneventful also. It's just the problems we're having are more likely within the Northwest and some flashes in the Northeast, particularly Borno State. So as anticipated, we had expected that, yes, they will come out, the protest will hold, but we're not expecting that it will be nationwide as advertised. So that was our analysis, yes.
Right. So, Mr. Adekoya, with the massive looting attacks and the unfortunate loss of lives we witnessed today, this is the first day. Is government justified with the warnings, the appeal, and what some called unnecessary apprehension ahead of this protest?
Yeah, so we had made several commentaries. Even if you look at the Twitter space engagement between the IGP with Ebon SN and Falana SN with some planned CSOs. If you listen carefully, the IG was saying he would not advise that people should go on a procession. And what the IG was simply saying is that we don't have enough security forces to dominate every part of the area. So providing security would be a bit of a challenge. Now, before I give you that answer, I'd also want to mention something we saw in Kano. In Kano, law enforcement perhaps were not ready for juveniles, because what we saw was a lot of juveniles, kids under the age of, say, average 14 downwards, going on riots, not on a protest. And this looked like a bit of an attritional approach on the part of protesters. If you start with kids, what happens when the adult comes out? So government perhaps may have had their reasons. Again, looking at the protest culture that's taken over the world, there are protests in Southport in UK, in Kenya just recently, in Bangladesh, even in the US, all over the world, people are seemingly protesting. So there's a protest culture that tends to lead to riots. So government was perhaps right in sounding a note of caution. And if I think we looked at the political landscape, almost everybody has said, yes, the people have a right to protest, but protest should be done peacefully. The case of Kano is no longer a protest, but a case of, people wanting to loot and, engage in one form of vice or criminality or the other. So it's beginning to take on a worrisome dimension. And expectedly, we've seen curfews in Yobe, in some parts of Yobe, in Borno, in Kaduna, some parts of Kano also. So again, maybe
So Mr. Adekoya, talking about Kano State, some stakeholders have said perhaps if Governor Abba Yusuf had warned impending hijackers against destabilizing the state, just like his colleagues did, it may have sent some shivers down their spine. But also, on a larger scale, how do you describe the level of destruction witnessed in Kano today, especially the Kano Information and Communication Technology Center, just days before its scheduled to launch, setting it on fire and making off with valuable equipment?
Yeah, interestingly, I just returned from Kano, where I did a road trip from Kano to Katsina. And while in Kano, despite the fact that Kano is a state that has two emirs, as it were, the people didn't give off the impression that they were going to come out en masse for the protest. The polity was not that charged. Not even the Emirates tussle was even much of a concern. So Kano was indeed a surprise. Now, to your point, perhaps the government also took it for granted that Kano had been somewhat quiet. So it's a case of preparedness. What other states did was to engage thought leaders, religious leaders, to have the local governments engage people within the local government communities and areas to sensitize and conscientize the people on the need for peaceful protests and to avoid a repeat of, the fracas that followed the endsars. So I think, like I said earlier, whilst we are surprised, it smacks of a bit of unpreparedness on the part of Kano, in particular, and perhaps maybe Kaduna. Advancing words of threat are neither here nor there, because the people have a fundamental right to protest. But doing so lawfully and peacefully is the campaign that government should have carried, a bit more aggressively to the people, holding thought leaders and different levels of power within the state accountable for their areas of responsibility and holding them also responsible for ensuring peace. So maybe that was somewhat lacking, because we didn't see second level leadership in the communities. We just saw the people left to their own devices, knowing also that we don't have enough police for Nigeria on a good day, let alone on a day like this, when, you can quickly find the gaps in the government's posture, rather shockingly, as it happened today.
Right, but as a security consultant, talk to us about the impact of this curfew on the state, juxtaposing it with the right of citizens to protest?
Well, the Constitution that provides the right to protest and assembly and association also gives conditions in which those rights can be abridged or abrogated, particularly in the cause of public good and public interest. So I think that all is provided for within the Constitution. Every well-meaning, right-thinking person would understand the reason for the curfew. And perhaps, again, we've seen some of the people who led the protests or were calling for the protests, now calling for government to take tougher measures to ensure peace and security. It's no easy feat walking this delicate dance between the rights of the people as guaranteed in the Constitution and the rights and responsibility of government to the larger society on the other hand. So I think the curfew is just born out of necessity. And if you look at the way some of the governments have approached it, they've declared curfews in select local governments. I think Geshua in Yobe, for example, Potiskum, and one. So the curfew is somewhat localized and it's not statewide in some states. So it's commendable, and I think it's a bit of a, unfortunately, reactive approach on some parts of those governments.
All right. And I'm hoping that Dr. Yao Sule joins us very soon so he can give us his own perspective on what happened in Kano State today. Well, with what we witnessed today, do you think the organizers of this protest have a duty to structure or restructure their protest?
I can't honestly think for the organizers of the protest. I'm not sure, so you have a mob mentality. Once a team forms and they become a mob, they take on a mind of their own. I watched the interview between one of the TV stations and one of the lawyers of the group in Abuja, having arguments on what to do, what not to do, move it to the stadium. No, I mean, it was clear at that point that the matter had gone beyond just one voice. So let's see how it goes. Some are anticipating that maybe more people will come out tomorrow. Some reckon that more people may not turn out, depending on how government continues to handle this and approach this. So I'm not sure what the protesters will be doing, but it's clear that protest is a guaranteed right. Rioting, looting, and stealing is criminality. The two are not the same, So I think the message has to be very clear.
But Mr. Adekoya, in your years of engagement in this profession, is there a possible protest without hijack?
Not necessarily. So if you talk about my years of experience and also look at the side of statecraft and influence operations, not every protest is what it looks like. When a protest becomes riotous and it begins to devolve into issues of burning down property, destroy, you begin to ask who stands to benefit from the whole crisis situation. Whose interest does it serve? And some of us, cynically also want to look at, are there external influences to some of these matters? We've seen the Orange Revolutions, we've seen the Arab Spring and what it eventually led to. So there's a configuration of interest when you have activities like this, some local, some foreign, some political, some just genuine, just out of the frustration of the moment. And if they all come into a pot, they tend to convolute and create, a crisis which sometimes cannot be localized. So protests can be hijacked. It's just a matter of interest at the moment and who is really at the tip of the spear in driving the process of the protest. I think that's where we like to look at in our own profession, not to say whether it can be hijacked. Any human activity can be hijacked. It just depends on who is pulling what strings.
All right. Before we continue this conversation, let me also announce that in the course of the program, we will be going to the nation's capital, Abuja, where the Inspector General of Police, Kaide Egbetokun, is set to speak on the state of security as the #hardship protest begins today. All right, Mr. Adekoya, let's move on with this conversation. Now, I'm curious to know how you would, assess the way security agencies handled the protesters today. Was it professional enough? Was it engaging? Were there loopholes you think the agencies should work on if this protest runs into day 2?
No, I mean, I would commend the Nigerian police. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. So there are flashes of some good. There are shows of the fact that we learned lessons from the NSAS. I mean, I saw a police officer, a commissioner of police, I believe, who was chanting Aluta songs, offered biscuits, offered refreshments, reassured the protesting public that the police is there with them, you know, to ensure their security. And that was quite soothing to see. We've seen a governor of a state come out, you know, to assure the people that their voices will be heard, their message will be delivered, and also offer them transport money, as it were, in a very convivial atmosphere. We've seen some charged police officers, unnecessarily charged. I mean, the police is the institution of state that is that has a monopoly of force when it comes to internal security, as it were, amongst other agencies. So they must wear the authority light. The police are first civilians drawn from the public, giving citizens rights to police on behalf of the citizen. So I think we want to see more of those good adjustments. And again, the lessons have been more deepened in the South compared to the North. So maybe this will be another learning curve for the police across the country. You know, everything about security is local dynamics, local context, local atmospherics, local polity, and the police must learn to adapt to local dynamics such that they de-escalate the conflict. And some of that 6 billion allocated, which I know is not enough for an operation like this, which will likely last 10 to 15 days. Some of those should be allocated to refreshing the protesters and making the atmosphere a bit less charged. It's enough that people are agitated. You don't need stern-looking policemen making menacing moves and the rest. Now, for those rioters who are approaching government houses, seeking to unseat lawfully elected governors, those ones are not protesters, and those ones are anarchists. And, you know, the law has a place for them, and I'm sure that the law will take its course.
All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will continue this conversation. Stay with us, everyone.
Information is power, information is security, information is knowledge. On Labor Lens, we believe that working people around the world have real questions of their own. They want to know how the world of work operates, what it means to the employer of labor, how policies affect workers in the workplace. On Labor Lens, I ensure we engage effectively the organized labor, organized private sector, and government to get out of them information workers are in need of. I am Sharon Ijason, asking questions that make you get sense of the workplace.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Politics Tonight. Now, let's take you straight to the nation's capital, Abuja, where the Inspector General of Police, Kaidi Egbetokun, is set to speak on the state of security as a hashtag hardship protest begins.
Today's media briefing tonight. I'm sure this was called at instance of the Inspector General of Police to give us updates and, of course, review of what we experienced today across the length and breadth of this country concerning the nationwide protest. On that note, I want to invite the Inspector General of Police of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to please address this noble gathering tonight. The IGP, we are all ready for you, sir. Thank you.
Gentlemen of the press, it is with grave sense of responsibility that I address you this evening. You will recall that upon several indications by various groups of their intent to commence a nationwide protest on 1st August 2024, we rolled out several warnings based on actionable intelligence at our disposal, indicating that some groups were mobilizing for violent protest, while some groups claiming to be mobilizing for peaceful protest were doing so with violent undertones, refusing to cooperate with the police on measures to be taken to guarantee peaceful protest. On the basis of this intelligence, the police advised that the protest should be shelved at this instant. Where the organizers insisted on going on with the protest, they were advised to stage the protest in confined locations. This will have enabled the police provide adequate protection for the protesters and isolate the criminals whose intention was to loot and destroy in the name of a protest. This we were doing in furtherance of our duty to protect lives and property and maintaining law and order. While we affirm the constitutional rights of citizens to assemble and express their views on issues of national importance, we were wary about the dangers posed by agitation instigated by some individuals who have shown tendencies to be disloyal to the government of the day. Despite our suspicions, we showed good faith through professional conduct by providing security at strategic locations, all aimed at ensuring peaceful conduct during the protest, as the promoters pledged. Our men deployed nationwide went out with a clear brief to ensure that no one is unnecessarily harassed or intimidated. In places where there were court orders, we gave instructions for observance of same. Regrettably, events in some major cities today show that what was being instigated was mass uprising and looting, not protest. Those who were in the forefront of promoting the idea of the protest were not around to lead it. Hoodlums have been let loose on innocent Nigerians and their hard-earned businesses and property looted and destroyed. The motive of the rioters was basically two: loot and destroy both private and government property. The destruction so far has been mind-boggling. There has been destruction in Kano, Borno, Yobe, Kaduna, Gombe, Bauchi, FCT, Abuja, Niger, and Jigawa. Police stations have been destroyed. There have been attempts to take over government houses, looting of government infrastructures. Several warehouses and shops so far have been looted and in several instances completely destroyed. In spite of the refusal of the protesters, for instance in FCT, to adhere to a court order requesting that protests in Abuja should be at the National Stadium, they trooped into the streets, and yet the police provided security for them. At no point did we breach their fundamental rights, even as they breached court orders. In places like FCT, Kaduna, Kano, and Gombe, among others, we recorded incidents of unprovoked attacks on our security personnel, where one policeman has been reported murdered and others seriously injured. We alerted earlier that terror elements may take advantage of the protest to infiltrate the crowd of protesters with suicide bombers. Yesterday in Lagos, our EOD team was informed of a suspected IED on Bakantoni Way, Ikeja. The team responded swiftly and rendered safe what turned out to be an improvised explosive device, IED. Today in Borno State, we recorded another incident of explosion, which occurred in the crowd of protesters, killing 4 instantly and severely injuring 34 others, many of whom are presently on danger list. We wish to advise law-abiding citizens of Nigeria to heed and not dismiss warnings given by the police and other security agencies, which were based on credible and actionable security intelligence. In the light of the current situation, the Nigerian Police Force has placed all units on red alert. Our officers are fully mobilized and prepared to respond swiftly and decisively to any further threats to public safety and order. We remain committed and resolute to protecting lives and property and ensuring that law and order are maintained across the nation. Groups who are hiding under the guise of exercise of a right provided in the Constitution to destabilize the country should also remember that the same Constitution imposed on them the duty to obey the laws of the land and respect the rights of other citizens. The police is equipped to respond appropriately to the unfolding situations and will get assistance from other security agencies, including the military, if the need arises. We appeal to all citizens to remain calm and cooperate with the police and other security agencies during this challenging period. Your safety is our top priority, and we will continue to take all necessary measures to ensure continued peace and stability in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector General of Police. The messages were clear enough. The IGP, sir, if I have the permission of the IGP, this is question time. Gentlemen of the press, if you have any clarification or intervention, the IGP is ready for you. Lucky channels.
IGP, sir. Good evening, sir. My name is Lucky Isawode. I work for Channels Television. In view of what has happened, would you be extending invitation to the organizers of this protest, those especially who have written to you and who you have invited before now?
Thank you, the chance. Ada Bisam on my IIT.
Good evening, sirs. My name is Ada Bisam Onawe. I report for Africa Independent Television, AIT. IGP, sir, I'd like to know what word of caution you have for those who have turned the protest into a violent activity today. And I'm also curious to know why you and your team of management staff are wearing this red band on your arm. Thank you, sir.
Ferdinand, Rise TV.
Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Well, just to circle back on issues concerning the court's order yesterday, well, one of the complaints from some of the protesters was about that they were not served any court judgment from yesterday. Can you shed more light on that particular situation, the court order and the efforts that were made to indeed serve on these parties?
Thank you. Francis from NTA.
Good evening, Mr. IGP. Good evening, the Force Management team. Francis from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA. This morning when I was coming to work, I was also attacked at the Abuja barracks. And I have a question for you, Mr. IGP, sir. Some of the protesters have alleged that it was because, some of the operatives, so to say, or officers, opened fire on them, thereby necessitating the action. I'd like to hear from you, sir. Your reaction.
Thank you.
First, let me take that question again from Lucky.
Francis.
Francis.
A couple question. Okay, Mr. IGP, sir. Some of the protesters that we've had cause to interview said some of your men allegedly attacked them. That was why they reacted in that order. At Nyanya Maraba Atisa.
Thank you. Stefan, TVC.
Good evening, IGP, senior management.
My name is Fonison from TVC News. Just like my colleague has just mentioned, on the outskirts of Abuja today, we also came under attack covering this incident. And there is an observation where the demonstrators, there's an impression we have, or having observed the ongoings, there's this, there seems to be the fact that police in that location were overwhelmed by the sheer size of the demonstrators. What are you doing differently?
Thank you. Then, Francis, you said you were attacked. You didn't indicate those who attacked you. You ought to have been specific. Protesters. Okay. Marabaya Aziz. Thank you. Any other one? I think we are done with question time. The IGP may wish to react to some of these issues raised, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. The first question was whether I will still be extending invitation to different groups who still want to stage protest. I want to believe that they have started the protest today. My invitation to the public, to those who intend to stage protest, is in the public and is still valid. So I'm not going to reissue that invitation. Then the lady from AIT wants to know what are my words of caution to the protesters. I want to caution that those who want to come out to protest must remain peaceful. Otherwise, they will not have it. We will not have a choice than to respond to their acts. Like what we have today, we had incidents of looting and destruction of private businesses. We are not going to tolerate that anymore. We had incidents where there were unprovoked attacks on policemen and other security agents. We are not going to accept that. So if I advise that they should just not bother to continue with this. When we talk about rights to protest, we are not denying the rights. We have said severally that we recognize the rights of citizens to protest. But this right is also not absolute right. The same constitution that gave them rights to protest also imposed duties on them. What our lawyers have been telling our youth is that it's their right, it's their right. Nobody is talking to the youth about their duties and responsibilities to the state. And that's the problem. These people should be educated. They should know that there are duties and responsibilities expected of them to the state. They only want to enjoy the rights and neglecting the duties. Those people who are claiming rights of protest, they should know that they have a duty to the nation, to respect the rights of other citizens, to obey the law of the land. There is also a duty to be loyal to the state, to be patriotic. It's a constitutional responsibility of a citizen of Nigeria. Nobody is talking about all those duties and responsibilities. All we are talking about is rights, and rights. Yes, it's good to know your rights, but it's not good to take the rights and neglect the duties. The two come together. Then why are we on red band? If you listen to my address, I said that all our commands and units have been put on red alert. So the red band we are wearing signifies, it's a symbol. Once you see us on red, just know that our commands are on red alert. Okay, there is this other one that said that the group who did not obey the court order claimed that they were not served. How do you serve faceless people? People that you don't know. How do you serve them with the orders? They remain faceless. So it will be difficult to serve them. Their threats were in social media. I think the other two was on social media. So I believe they have been served. The channel's reporter reported an attack on himself by protesters.
TVC. and TVC.
Francis, was it not Francis? Okay. Francis said that he was also attacked while going to work. Francis is not a policeman. I don't know how he got attacked. So it shows that the intention of these so-called protesters are not genuine. Otherwise, why do you attack a reporter who is not in uniform? Then they claim that the police first of all attacked them and they responded. It's false. If you say that, if you believe their claim that the police were attacked, the police attacked them before they attacked the police, I will ask you, you are also a victim of the attack. What, did you also attack them before they attacked you? You didn't attack them and they attacked you. So the police didn't attack them, they attacked the police without provocation. And I have said, we are not going to allow that, we are not going to accept that. That's totally unacceptable to us. Yeah, there was this one on, I don't know whether this is a question. You said that the police appeared overwhelmed. We were not overwhelmed. We have our standby units everywhere. We prepare for this. We were only civil. The fact that we were civil does not mean that we were weak. We were only civil because we were expecting them to be peaceful. I think I've answered your questions.